shines a light. Dustin's clicks keep the show tight. Politics, events, and much more. Borderline banter, never a bore. Tune in, listen, join the conversation. Borderline banter, your source of information. Welcome to the world of borderline banter, where we dive deep into every current canter. Mike's the host with Dustin by his side, pressing buttons, taking us on the ride. Politics, events, and much more. Borderline banter, never a bore. Tune in, listen, join the conversation. Borderline banter, your source of information. From politics to global affairs, we dissect the news nobody compares. Mike's insight shines a light. Dustin's clicks keep the show tight. Politics, events, and much more. Borderline banter, never a bore. Tune in, listen, join the conversation. Borderline banter, your source of information. Welcome to the world of borderline banter, where we dive deep into every current canter. Mike's the host with Dustin by his side, pressing buttons, taking us on the ride. Politics, events, and much more. Borderline banter, never a bore. Tune in, listen, join the conversation. Borderline banter, your source of information. From politics to global affairs, we dissect the news nobody compares. Mike's insight shines a light. Good day, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday. Yes, Tuesday evening. Welcome to Borderline Banter. As always, I'm your host, Mike, and Dustin's here with us. How's your Tuesday going, Dustin?
It's going pretty good. I'm pretty excited. We got a fantastic debate between two people who could be a president.
For sure.
Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be more entertaining than the last one we did.
Yeah. There's also bingo cards. I was starting to look at them. Have you looked at any bingo?
Sorry about the quick link. I'm about to give my cat a treat, so she can be nice during the debate.
That's a pretty good bingo card.
But yeah, welcome to show everyone. Hope you're having a great night. Yeah, we're gonna be watching the debate, giving minimal commentary, and yeah, so hope you're having a good time. Feel free to join in the conversation. And yeah, if you haven't already, please, if you're watching later, hit that like, follow, that subscribe button, and share the video. So who do you think's gonna win, Dustin? Guess how do you determine it? Because no matter what,
I was gonna say I don't think that's how this works.
What they do, everyone always says like I saw a thing that's saying Kamala's has a 79% chance of winning.
Winning what?
The debate.
What does that mean?
But again, depends on what you believe, right? So that can mean many things. So, do you want to see something?
There is no winning this.
Yeah, I want to show you something here.
Losing.
So you know how I've been watching Predict It.
Not having a gaffe.
You know how I've been watching Predict It. Last week, Kamala Harris, actually like 3 days ago, Kamala Harris was at 58 cents. Donald Trump was at 48 cents. Today, Kamala Harris is at 52 cents. Donald Trump is at 51 cents.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah,
Predict It.
Now this is a prediction, Nick, so this means nothing. But yeah.
Well, I mean, if you look right now at like CNN, like the news channels right now, they're showing polls and stuff that I think they just
50,
showed a little
50.
bit ago was like 52-49 or something.
If not closer, yeah.
Was.
So, but yeah, it's gonna be.
Depending on where you look at polls and what question was asked.
Right, how do you win a debate? Like, but that way you look at it is like Fox, you do, because like Fox, people on Fox are gonna say one thing, people on CNN are gonna say another, same as MSNBN, whatever you call them, all those.
Yeah, but they don't care. They're gonna say what they're gonna say regardless.
Because they're gonna pick, and no matter what, if Kamala Harris fans are gonna say Kamala won the debate. And Trump fans are going to say Trump.
You said MSNBC. That's literally Kamala News Network. Right
but like even after the last debate with Joe Biden, people said Joe Biden did such a good job with the debate
The next day, Joe Biden had him on stage. He's like, and you answered all the questions. Do you remember
Not
that?
everyone.
So
You said everyone?
here, without
No, a lot of people said he shit the bed and had the gaps thing that I was talking about. I don't
Well,
think
a
there's
lot of people
winning.
still
I
did
think
that.
There is losing. I don't think there's something to be gained. I don't think either of them are going to come out of this with additional voters. I think if you have a gap, you can lose voters. But you're not going to gain voters, so that's why I don't think there's winning. There's just not losing. So both of them should come out here and do exactly what they've been doing so that they don't lose voters, basically.
Well,
So
I guess,
see,
did they take that off the internet? Because you think that would trigger it.
What are you looking for?
When Joe Biden said to Joe, you did such a good job and you answered all the...
Well, to be fair, you're trying to find it specifically on YouTube, so that might be part of it, but you did a good job, Joe Biden. Let's see if just Google.
So the debate starts in 4 minutes.
Okay, I see USA Today's article quoting her saying you did such a great job.
Yeah. Okay, it doesn't really matter.
Here, I found it.
Yeah, well, I can't switch screens now, man. It's going to mess
but
me
I can send you a link.
Maybe, though, because, again, I can't switch screens. It might mess things up. We'll see.
Wait,
I'm still not a pro.
I've seen Joe close.
What?
Well, this
See,
is
now
like
you're
2
gone.
minutes and 44 seconds, and actually the title of the YouTube video isn't the quote we're saying. It's I've seen Joe up close.
Okay,
Is
so
that the
anyway,
same
I can't
speech?
change windows because you're gone now. Look at it. Like,
Oh, I'm not looking at that at the moment. I'm gone. Bye, everyone.
yep, you're gone. It's over. Yeah,
I lost
show's
the
over.
debate, just
Have a good
like
night.
that.
Yeah, Dustin lost. Gosh darn it. Ah. Okay, there we go. Back to normal. All right. Well, let's go to the debate and see how that's going, I guess. And we'll see. So, you said you saw the rules. Do you want to go over the rules before we get started?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. We should probably talk about a little bit.
Because
I just found a video.
I'm not switching windows again. Sorry.
Places like the suburbs of
Gee,
Okay, I
whoa.
Philadelphia.
find the
Of course,
video.
that is the plan. That is
Finally,
what the
this was the
campaign
real
wants.
one.
But it's all going to be about the execution in the moment, especially if Harris tries to bait the former president into an
So yeah, as far as
Savannah.
the rules,
All right, Dasha, thank you.
I had that up a second ago. We were talking about it.
Goddamn, what are you doing, Kat? How'd you get in there?
Well, I guess we might have to fight him again. CBS News, they should be able to tell us, right?
Here are the rules for the debate. Trump-Harris.
So the candidates
Biden
will. Oh, did you
administration,
find
that word
something?
we keep using,
Yeah,
change. How would she change
Um,
things right now? Does she
The debate will be
acknowledge
90
to some
minutes with
extent
2
that the
commercial
economy
breaks.
is not
I'm
where
gonna
she-
mute that quickly. The 2 seated moderators, David and Lindsay, will be the only people asking questions. A coin flip was held virtually on Tuesday, that last week. Candidates will be introduced by the monitors. The candidates will enter upon instruction from the opposite sides of the stage. No opening statements. Candidate will stand behind the podiums for the duration of the debate. Props and pre-written notes are not allowed on stage. Ooh, I know Harris wanted that. No topics or questions will be shared in advance. Some candidates will be given a pen and pad of paper and a bottle of water. Candidates have 2 minutes to answer the questions. 2 minutes to.
I know Trump wanted that.
Yeah, water. So.
No, the pre-written notes.
Um,
You said you know Harris.
I thought it
know
was
Trump wanted that.
I thought it was Harris. Candidates will
I know Trump wanted
not
it.
permit
Harris
to
wanted
ask
it, I know
questions
Trump
to
wanted
each
it.
other. Campaign staff may not interact with candidates during the commercial breaks. Okay, there will be no audience. Okay, it looks like they haven't started yet. It should be starting any second now.
Well, I mean, there's gonna be like intros and shit. Like
6 seconds.
I guess
So,
they're on the
that's
hour,
what it
but-
is.
here
Okay.
in New York
Because
and in
they have to both
Philadelphia.
be
The
introduced
room
and
where
walk
it's
out
about
on
to
stage
happen.
and
We're
stuff,
just
right?
seconds away now
Yeah.
from tonight's first and perhaps last presidential debate between
Yeah, I
Vice
do hope
President
they.
Kamala Harris
I guess it
and
doesn't
former
matter. We'll see how this
President Donald
goes.
Trump.
As we've noted, this will be the first
Nothing's
time
gonna
these
change.
candidates have met in person, and it's happening on a debate stage. Also, the first debate since President Biden left the
Candidates
race
will be
over
introduced
the
by the
summer, and
moderator,
Harris
so yeah,
became the
Yes, so
Democratic
this is the
nominee.
first
A lot
time
has
they're
happened
meeting in
in a
person.
very
That's kind of
compressed
crazy.
period of time.
Yes, it has, and we have a few moments until the debate starts. We will join it. ABC News is broadcasting it, but we will simulcast it right here in its entirety. It's taking place at the National Constitution Center.
And we're gonna thank
in Philadelphia.
ABC and
And like June's
NBC
debate,
tonight.
there will be no audience tonight. The candidates' microphones will be muted.
I guess we
Only
should have waited.
everyone is talking. Each candidate will get 2 minutes
that's
for
fine. I
answers.
mean,
there
we-
will be closing statements, but no
They may
opening
not cover every
statements. So
single
we
bullet.
expect them to probably mix it up rather early in this as they stake out their positions, and we get a sense of where all this is going.
And the mics are muted when the other is talking. So let's take you to Philadelphia now and the first presidential debate of 2024.
So what happens?
Second presidential debate of
Thank you for
2024.
joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want
So
to
what
welcome
happens
viewers
if
watching on
candidates
ABC
will not
and
be
around the
permitted to
world
ask
tonight.
questions of each
Vice
other?
President
What happens
Kamala
when they
Harris and
inevitably do?
President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage
I don't
in
know.
this unprecedented race.
Nothing.
Because that's one of these
And I'm
rules.
Lindsay
But what
Davis.
happens?
Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first
hope
debate
you can
since
hear it,
President Biden
whoever's
withdrew
watching.
from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald
might
Trump
do
in
this
June.
sound check,
Since then,
right?
this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with
Yeah,
2 commercial
I can
breaks.
definitely hear
No
it 'cause I'm
topics
hearing
or
it. I hear
questions
it
have been
twice
shared
when
with
I
the
unmute it.
campaigns. The candidates will have
Okay.
2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn
Although,
to
did you
speak. No
pause it?
pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here
No,
tonight
it's
in
not
this
moving
hall
at
at the
all.
National Constitution
Yeah.
Center. This is an intimate setting for two
Oh, there we
candidates
go. That
who
was
have
weird.
never met.
President Trump won the
was a
coin
long
toss. He
hiccup.
chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening.
I don't know if that was on my
Vice
end.
President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So
Maybe
let's now
just on
welcome the
mine, I don't
candidates
know.
to the stage.
But I see it
Vice
on the
President
YouTube
Kamala
too.
Harris
Yeah,
and
it's not
President
moving on
Donald
YouTube.
Trump.
Weird. Okay, here we
Seems
go.
good now. And here we go.
Oh. Oh.
Wait, they're not introducing
Oh.
them.
Oh.
Kamala Harris.
Oh. 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 They shook hands.
Welcome to you both. It's
Wow. I didn't think that was gonna happen.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly
you have a
say
bet that they
is their
wouldn't?
number one
Oh,
issue.
there
and
was a
that is
bet
the
you could've
economy
made.
and the cost of living in this country.
Yeah, imagine
Vice
if
President
you make
Harris,
that
you and
bet.
President Trump
And it was
debated
quite
4
high.
years ago,
It
and
was
your
quite
opponent on
high.
stage here tonight
How much
often
did you lose?
asks his supporters, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people, and that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes
I'm
for their
having
children.
issues on my end here.
My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs
what
of
happens
middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation has, which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're
Kamala Harris supposed to say something.
The highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
COVID.
Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
Well, that's not.
I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas. I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference.
They're gonna
nothing to do.
hold that against him. You should have said that.
Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died. Has there been anything like it? We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So
one question in.
Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I
he's gonna
describe
do
as
a
an
little measly
opportunity
1.5%
economy,
or some
and
shit
the
for-
best
for lower
economists
income
in our
people so that
country,
they
if not
will
the
mindlessly
world,
say, "He did
have
something
reviewed
for
our
us."
relative
It'll be
plans for
literally
the
like
future of
$200 a day.
America. What Goldman Sachs
they'll
has
defend
said
that $200
is
like it
that
was the
Donald
best
Trump's
$200.
plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan
Of course, they both want to
would
do tax breaks
actually
for the wealthy.
explode the deficit. 16 Nobel
Only
laureates
Trump does.
have
Kamala Harris
described
would never
his
do that,
economic
okay?
plan as something that would increase
would you say
inflation
that?
and by the
Are you
middle
being
of
biased?
next
I'm
year
being
would
facetious.
invite a
You're
recession.
being biased.
You just have
You've
to
been
look
brainwashed by Kamala
at
Harris,
where we
haven't you?
are and where
Probably.
we stand on the issues. And I'd
You would
invite you
never
to
say
know
such a thing
that
otherwise.
Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending
His
himself
plan is
than
trickle
he
down.
is in
He's
looking
literally
out
already
for
said
you.
it.
Like these, that it is
Whoa.
somewhat asymmetrical.
Whoa, what did you do, Mike?
Many of those professors, the top professors,
Sorry.
being generous because many things
I'm actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I
What is
believe
that plan?
in the ambition, the
They posted something on
aspirations,
our
the
website.
dreams
It's
of the
Biden's
American
plan.
people. And that is
Okay,
why
so
I
they copied and
imagine
pasted.
and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing.
She's got new
We know
buzzwords,
that
though. You
we
hear that?
have a
Opportunity
shortage
economy and
of
OE.
homes and housing. And the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business
Sorry, we
owner.
went back
I
a little
love
bit
our
far.
small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump
She
will give
looks
you 2
broken,
minutes.
kind of there.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off.
I hope the
because it was so
fly
much
shows
money
up
they
again.
can't.
Remember
They
the fly
totally
from a few years
destroyed
ago?
everything that
Doesn't
they've
have
set
to be
out
a
to
fly.
do.
It could
They're
be,
taking in billions of
anything.
dollars from China
take
and
any
other
kind of bug.
places. They've left the tariffs on. When
know,
I
if it's
had
like
it,
a-
I
like
had
a little
tariffs, and yet
beetle
I
or
had no
something?
inflation.
Little,
Look, we've had a
termite?
terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It
It's
breaks
nice to
up
see nature
countries.
participating.
We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions.
Did we go back way too far? We did.
And you see what's
We're
happening.
gonna
You see
skip
what's
it.
happening with towns. Through
It's so hard to
towns,
tell.
we got mad.
Let's
Let's
just
talk about this.
go back.
Describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists
Sorry,
in our
guys.
country, if not the world.
That's why you
have
watch a
reviewed
debate
our
somewhere else.
relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described
not the
his
deficit.
economic
I love when
plan as
liberals
something
care about
that
the
would
deficit.
increase inflation and by the
everyone
middle
loves
of
voting
next
for,
year would invite
deficit
a
off.
recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite
Trump
you to
hasn't
know
changed his
that
look
Donald
since
Trump
he
actually
started.
has no plan for you
His
because
eyes
he's
open
more
now.
interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
He's trying not to fall
It's just a
asleep.
soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance. and
Soundbite.
Many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. Just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely done with what they've done.
Expensive.
They've
Price has gone
destroyed
up.
the economy.
Even here,
And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. "Thank you, President Xi," exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and
She
when
looks-
you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many
did
of
you
these
see that
people
Andrew
coming
said
in
it's
are
a little
criminals.
quiet?
And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West
pointed to the
Virginia,
other
not
side
the current
immediately.
governor, is doing an excellent job. But the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that.
Now that's just not with a healthy born
Vice-presidential
baby.
pick, which
Again, I
think
don't
was a
want to
horrible
talk
pick, by the way, for
really
our country,
agree with it.
because
That's
he
not
is
just
really
any
out of it.
baby either.
But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's
Oh,
an
Harris
execution
talked
of
first
the
over the mic.
baby is
I
born.
didn't see that one
That's
coming.
Okay, and that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade
You're not going to count
into
earlier
the
when Trump
states.
started talking
And
before his
through
mic started.
the
I didn't see that. I'll have to go back and look.
and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also.
Well, there you go.
85% of
There's your third
Republicans
term
do.
abortion.
Exceptions. Very important.
Life of the mother.
But we were able to get
It's
it,
almost like
and
you
now
didn't
states
fucking
are
research like
voting
every
on
other
it.
conservative
And for the
who
first
wants to
time,
legislate
you're
and
going
say
to see,
6
look,
weeks
this
and
is
then
an
point the other
issue
side and say,
that's
well, they
torn
want to
our
do 9
country
months. Like,
apart
dude,
for
you're saying
52
6 fucking
years.
weeks, idiot.
Every legal scholar,
why are we
every
trying to pick the
Democrat,
number
every
of, like,
Republican,
why are we
liberal,
doing this? This
conservative,
is-
they all
none of us are
wanted
medical
this
people.
issue to be brought back to the states where
should
the
not be
people could vote.
legislated.
And that's what
Yeah.
happened. And now,
This
Ohio,
is quite literally
the
women's
vote
health
was
care.
somewhat
What
liberal.
are we doing?
Kansas,
Neither of these
the
people
vote
are
was
doctors.
somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people
That's a
would have
failed
thought.
business person, and
But
that's a failed
each
lawyer person.
individual state is voting.
Okay.
It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country
They
where
have
it is
no
legal
courage.
to kill
They're
a baby
incredibly
after it's
well
born.
protected.
Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry
Oh,
a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter, because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?
Well, I won't have to, because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea, and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it, because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's...
25,000? That's not solving the problem.
Reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade, and as you rightly mentioned,
it sounds good on paper.
Nowhere in America
it
is
sounds
a
good on
woman
paper.
carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country?
He did say he wants the government to pay for that.
Working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing,
Being a leader is saying
you should
something in an
ask.
interview.
Will she allow abortion in
interview,
the
you
8th
didn't even
month,
say
9th month,
explicitly the
7th
government
month?
will pay for it.
Come on.
Okay, would you
said
do
the
that?
government or insurance company.
Why don't you ask her?
Why
Don't
don't
ask
you
questions.
answer the question
And
with
also,
your
how's
Because
it
veto?
under
gonna
Roe
make
v.
that
Answer
Wade,
the question
you
with your
could,
veto.
you could
vote
do
on the
abortions
Congress.
in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look
And
at the
probably.
governor, former
Okay, John.
governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside, and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security.
the
We know it's an
exact
issue
same
that's important to
fucking lines over and
Republicans,
over again on
Democrats,
abortion.
voters
It's
across
just-
the
it doesn't
board
change
in this
Well, the
country.
governor might have
Vice
said that.
President Harris,
Whether it be
you
the
were
law or
tasked by
not
President
doesn't-
Biden
is
with
another
getting to
thing.
the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in
missed
the
my
Biden
point.
administration.
You're
This past
you're
June,
taking the bait.
President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to
The other
act?
side has
And
bait
would you
too.
have
I can
done
make you fall
anything
for any
differently
side
from
on the
President
abortion
Biden on
shit.
this?
That was just
So I'm
bait.
the only person on this
What Trump
stage
said
who
was
has
bait.
prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She
Yeah.
said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there.
So you
And
don't
then
intend to
showing
leave
them
early
in
out
a
of
different
boredom?
light. So she can't talk
hasn't
about
said
that. People
anything
don't leave my
to contend
rallies.
that,
We
just
have the
that
biggest
something about her
rallies, the most
rallies.
incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country
do they
is
leave
being
early?
lost. We're a failing nation.
they get
And it
bored?
happened 3.5 years
Both
ago.
have been pretty big crowds.
And what's going
no, it's
on
not the
here,
question.
you're going to end up
The
in
question is,
World
do they
War
get bored and
III, just to
leave
go
early?
into another subject. What they have done to our country
He
by
wants it to be
allowing
about
these
the size of the
millions
crowd
and
or
millions of
something else,
people
but
to
it's
come
like,
into
do
our
they get bored
country,
and leave early?
and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to
I
be
see people do
Aurora
that
or
at hockey
Springfield.
games.
A lot of towns don't want to talk
Yeah,
about
I
it
see
because they're
baseball
so
games, too.
embarrassed
I'm
by it.
usually one of them.
In Springfield,
And I'll be honest, I've
they're
tried watching
eating
these
the
debates. I
dogs.
I will
the people
never
that came
leave a
in,
hockey game
they're
early.
eating the cats.
That's one of the
they're
most
eating-
offensive things you can do in
they're
Canada. Do
eating
not
the
do it.
pets of the people that live there.
I'll do it. I
And
don't
this
care.
is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as the rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America
This is
great again. It's a very
rambling.
simple phrase, make America great again.
What was the question?
She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance
Why
of
did you veto
success.
the bill?
Not only success, will end
No,
up
right,
being
right.
Venezuela on steroids.
Why'd you
I
kill
just
the
want to
bill about
clarify here. You bring up
border security that
Springfield,
you absolutely agree with?
Ohio, and ABC News
Because
did reach
the-
out to
the
the city
Democrats
manager
literally
there.
made
He
a
told us
conservative
there have
border
been no credible
and the
reports of
conservatives voted
specific
no on
claims
it.
of pets being harmed,
At his
injured, or
behest. So
abused by
why?
individuals within the immigrant
now.
community.
Well,
All
I've seen
this-
people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
The people on
this is a
television say
clear-
my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good
Yeah.
thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But the
television.
people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
What is this
Talk
dog
about
thing?
extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formally worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former
getting
Vice President
makeup.
Dick Cheney
Put some
and
makeup on
Congress
while
member
she's saying
Liz
this
Cheney.
shit.
Oh, you
And
got the
if you want to
Cheneys.
really
Good on
know
you.
the inside track
You
on
know that's not
who
a good
the former
thing, right?
president
I-
is,
I
if
know
you
that's
didn't
not a
make it
good
clear
thing.
When the
already,
Cheneys look at
just
your
ask
platform
people
and
who
go,
have worked with
"Yeah, I
him.
like what I see
His
here."
former chief of staff, a
normal
four-star
people
general,
should be
has said he has
scared that the
contempt for the
Cheneys like what they
Constitution of
see.
the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary
The
of
normal,
Defense
everyday
has said the nation, the republic,
isn't
would
like the
never
Cheneys.
survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond
Yeah.
here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a
Nobody
bad
believes you
job,
when you say
I
that.
fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was
Literally,
no good. I fired
no
him. So he
American
writes a
believes
book.
him when
Another
he
one
makes
writes a
these points
book.
about
Because with me, they
Afghanistan.
can write books. With nobody else can
It was
they?
a goddamn
But
forever
they
war
have done
none
such
of
a
us
poor
wanted to be
job.
in.
And they never fire
Well,
anybody.
You're telling
Look
me
at the
13 people
economy.
died?
Look at the inflation.
fine.
They didn't fire any of
20
their
years,
economists.
dude.
They have the same people.
20
That's
years
a good
and way
way
more than
not to
13.
have books written
So,
about
dude,
you.
none of
But
us care.
just to finish, I got more votes than
My
any
brother, my
Republican
oldest brother
in
fought in this
history
bullshit.
by far.
Afghanistan
In
and
fact,
Iraq.
I got more votes than any president, sitting president
Unfortunately, he
in
was
history by far.
So he didn't have a
Let me
chance to
continue
die,
on immigration.
but,
It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is much higher because of them.
Yeah.
They allowed criminals, many
They're
They're going to
millions
use
of
that
criminals.
against him, too.
They allowed terrorists.
Yeah,
They
they're going to
allowed
clip it.
common
He
street
said,
criminals.
yeah.
They allowed
Door to
people
door?
to come in, drug
Clearly
dealers to
not
come
what he
into our
said.
country.
Yeah,
And they're
he
now
said
in the
yep, though.
United
No, it's
States
clear.
and
All I heard was
told
yeah.
by
Yeah.
their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest
not shaking her head
mistakes
no.
in history for them
She's
to
shaking
allow.
everything else, but
and
not
I think
that.
they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never
Probably
been
too
anything
busy
done
writing
like
down
this
all the
at all. They've
counters to every
destroyed the
moronic thing
fabric
he
of our
just
country.
said.
Millions of people let in,
Like,
and all
does he
over the
not think we're
world,
gonna, like,
crime
look
is
up what
down.
he's saying
All over the world,
ever?
except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their
It's not.
fraudulent
Let's
statements
record
that
it
they
so she
made.
can-
It's
Crime in
not.
this country is
Doesn't mean
through
knows.
the roof,
She's
and
shaking
we
her
have a
head
new
now.
form of crime.
It's
It's
not.
called migrant crime, and
It's
it's
simply
happening
not.
at levels
Because
that
he
nobody
changed the
thought
topic.
possible.
It's
President
not
Trump,
about-
as you know, the
it's not
FBI
about
says
selling the-
overall violent crime is actually coming
and
down in this
undocumented
country. But
people-
Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI defraud. They were defrauding
This moron
statements.
is not making good
They
points.
didn't include the
These are
worst
the same
cities.
terrible
They
talking
didn't
points he's been
include
making
the
all
cities
along.
with
It's
the
the
worst
same
crime.
fact-checking
It was a
debunk. I don't
fraud.
have to
Just
come up
like
with
their
a
number
new
of
thing. He's saying the same shit.
818,000 jobs that
same
they said they
debunk,
created
again.
turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich,
Saying that migrant crime
coming
is a
from
real thing
someone
to be
who has been
scared of is
prosecuted
wrong. Factually
for
wrong.
Oh, she brought it up.
national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person
Like, cool,
stands
but
on the
we've
issue
heard that a
of
million
what is
times this
important
month,
about
so
respect
you
for
don't
the
have to tell
rule of
us.
law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the
Yes, you're a
decision that came down
politician.
just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the
It's a
Justice
witch
Department.
hunt.
Every one of
It's
those
a
cases
political
was
witch
involved
hunt.
with the
It's just
DOJ,
because
from
I'm
Atlanta and
for
Fani
office.
Willis to
Yeah,
to
or you
the
did the things.
Attorney
You know,
General
like,
of New York and the
there's a
DA in
level
New
of
York.
burden of
Every
proof
one
in
of
these
those
fucking court
cases,
cases
and
that was
then
met
they say,
type
"Oh,
shit.
he's a
Dumbass.
criminal." They're the ones that made them go
But
after
again,
me. By
he's
the
just
way,
saying
Joe
the same thing he
Biden
always says.
was
He
found
can't.
essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, "Oh, that's the toughest of them all." A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out.
Nothing happened to
It's
either of you on the
weaponization,
documents,
and they
is what
used it,
happened.
and it's never
What
happened in
happened?
this country.
You both got
They
treated the
used
same.
it to try and win an election.
President
They're
Trump-
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about
The cases are
extreme
totally
and understand the context in which this
You're
election
guilty
in
of something.
2024 is
Sorry,
taking
bud.
place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed
Yeah.
disdain for members
what?
of our
Trump's got such a
military.
weird smile right
Understand
now on his face.
what it would mean if Donald Trump were
I don't
back
know.
in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice
to
President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president,
Weaponized, please.
We gotta
This is the
continue
one
here.
that weaponized, not me.
Think you
She
turned his mic
weaponized.
on.
I probably took
Yeah,
a
but he's,
bullet
like,
to the
shouting to get
head
him to do it.
because of the things that they
It's not
say
his
about
turn,
me.
it's just, like,
They talk
making it
about
his turn. They're being
democracy.
nice.
I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a
President
fake
Trump.
Russia investigation.
We do have a
It
lot
down,
went
Trump.
nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President
It
Harris, in
went
your last
nowhere.
run
So
for
how does
president,
that
you said you
affect
wanted to ban
democracy,
fracking.
dumbass?
Now you don't. You
He
wanted
always says
mandatory
that
government
they're the threat
buyback
to
programs for
democracy, but
assault
democracy
weapons.
hasn't
Now your
fucking changed.
campaign says you don't.
It
You
hasn't.
supported decriminalizing border
It's the same
crossings.
process still.
Now you're taking a harder line.
still
I know
vote.
you say that
Still
your
state
values
delegates.
have not changed.
Food crime
So then
rates.
why
Same.
have so many of your policy positions
The fuck does he
changed?
mean?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother
just to try to get the
who
gotcha
worked and
on the
saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people
the Democrats want
down.
to build a wall.
Yeah,
Just
saying.
the true measure of the leader
This is why it's important to call them liberals and not left.
The strength is
because
not
their
in beating
policies
people
are no
down,
longer
it's in
left.
lifting people up. I
They're
intend to
quite
be
literally
that
using right-wing
president.
policies.
President Trump,
Right-wing
Well, first of all, I
platform
wasn't
shit,
given
like,
$400
build the
million.
wall.
I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him.
They
But
think
I
they
was
can
given a
outflank
fraction of that, a tiny
Republicans
fraction,
on
and I built it
immigration
into
and
many,
border
many
security.
billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police. She's been against that forever. She gave
she's
all
been
that
for
stuff
that.
up
Against that?
very
Yeah, he fucked
wrongly,
up there.
very horribly, and everybody's
Also,
laughing
she's a
at it,
cop.
okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably
Like, your
14 or
point doesn't
15
really
different
land, but
policies.
she's-
She used to live in
She
Canada.
was big
eh?
on defund the police. In Minnesota,
she?
she went
Yeah,
out.
Montreal.
Wait a minute,
She lived
I'm
there for a
talking
few years.
now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Wait,
She
he's asked her
went out.
question.
She
That's
went
second-
out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out
Minneapolis
of
was not
jail.
burned down.
She did things that nobody would ever think
He's
of.
literally just
Now she wants to
recycling
do
talking points like a
transgender
fiend.
operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical
What?
left
What the
liberal
fuck
that will
word
do
salad
this.
was that?
She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one.
Yeah,
Just
I
to
remember
finish
when we
one
used to
thing,
have
it's
a
so
town
important
there.
in my opinion.
Minnesota.
So
It's
I got the
gone.
orders. Been 5 times, 4 times,
You can't
5
say
times
that.
higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got
Mike,
it
I
up
got mute
to
mic
where
on.
I was because they had no choice, because the prices
Yeah,
of
what?
energy were
Mute mic.
quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400,
By the way, I'm a big fan of what I'm
500
shitting
acres
on.
of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay,
Some
thank you.
word
We have an
salad
election
there.
in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people?
Do you not care about the officers?
She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the
Yeah,
border czar
the ones
because
who
she's
killed
embarrassed by
themselves
the border. In fact,
afterwards?
she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet.
She doesn't care
That's
about those. I
because
guess those
she
don't
knows
count.
what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When
doesn't
are
count
they
those.
going to
He
be
literally doesn't
prosecuted?
count those.
When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all
That's a very
over
wide way to
the
try to
world,
count
David.
that, 'cause
All over the world.
if
And
you can't
crime
handle
rates
a
are down all over the
small
world
riot
because
like
of it.
that.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people
Sounds
that
like you don't
burned
wanna count
down
them either.
Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a
weird.
big
Usually the
percentage
people
of the
who like
city of
cops
Seattle.
would, like,
When are those people going to be
Care about
prosecuted?
those.
But let me
Yes.
just ask
You might ask her that
You
question.
were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor
yes
of
or no
Washington,
question.
D.C.
This
and
like
the mayor put it
long-winded
back in
answer
writing,
stuff
as
is
you
so
know.
dumb.
I said, you know,
It's
this is going
obvious
to be a
he's saying
very
no, he
big
regrets nothing.
rally or
No
whatever
is
you
the
want to
answer.
call it. And
Everything
again,
else
it
is just
wasn't done
fluff.
by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to
Nobody
give you
asked you if you
10,000
did
National
something.
Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't
Nobody
do her
brought
job.
up
The question
security.
was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died.
Yeah, but those don't count because they
And
didn't die.
understand, the
Until later.
former
They died
president
later, so it
has
doesn't
been
count,
indicted
remember?
and
But
impeached
140 injuries also
for
just don't
exactly
count, 'cause
that
they're just
reason.
injuries.
So that one day
But
did it
this is
not
not
the
an
10 years
isolated
before that where they saw
situation.
something happen?
Let's remember
Lots
Charlottesville,
of police officers got hurt,
where
and
there
conservatives don't
was
care.
a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing
But Minneapolis
anti-Semitic
burned down.
hate. And what did the
It's
president
ridiculous.
then at the time say?
Looking at those two things.
There were fine people on each
I saw the
side.
fires. There was,
Let's
there was
remember.
a lot of
It's like
crime going
Minneapolis
on.
burned down.
When
A
it
lot
came
of
to the
useless
Proud
riots
Boys,
going that
nothing
day.
happened.
Oh, we're
Nothing
stealing
happened.
for
The
president
this.
said,
you
the
were
former president said,
destroying
stand
shit,
back
not
and
as
stand
businesses.
by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's
Don't
not
go
go
back.
back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too
They could
far
turn
for
the page
you,
a
well,
few
there
times
is a
tonight. I wonder if
place
they're gonna make a compilation.
in our campaign
Backwards.
for you
You
to
turn the page
stand
backwards. Oh, forwards.
for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law.
She says we're not going
and
backwards.
to
We're
end the
going to turn the
chaos.
page. Turning the page
And to
inherently
end
is forward.
the approach that is
would
about
specify if
attacking
you're
the
turning it
foundations
backward.
of our democracy because
Like,
you
don't
don't
you know the
like the
Metallica song? Nobody
outcome.
questioned
And
what
be
that meant.
clear on that point. Donald
Sleepers
Trump, the
when I open.
candidate,
Turn
has said
the
in this
page.
election there will be a bloodbath if
Dialogue.
this and the
Oh,
outcome of this
come on,
election is not
Harris.
to his liking. Let's
Oh.
turn the page on this. Let's not
Turn
go
the
back.
page!
Let's
Turn the page!
chart a course
I need to.
for the
where's
Let's
future.
not go back.
Turn
Not
the page.
go
Turn the
backwards
page.
to the
Ah,
Turn the page.
I did
Just
it!
follow up here.
I knew it!
It was a different term, and
She
it was
did
a
it. She got a
term
cool
that
moment,
related
but I
to
don't think it's a
energy
gap.
because they have destroyed our
I don't think
energy
anybody's done a
business.
gap.
That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up.
What
They
was
bring all of this
debunked
stuff up.
exactly?
I ask you this. You talk
have
about
to look into
the
that. I
Capitol.
don't know.
Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in
No,
2020?
I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
But
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they
there was
said
no
we didn't have standing.
That's
the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker, so he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over
that do
again are
lose
court
power,
cases you
because I
have
have a huge storm
lost
outside right now,
because you
so-
did in fact lose
Oops.
that
Oh, okay.
election. It leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men.
No,
they call him
Trump's
he's a
hair
tough
looks
person.
different.
Let me
Smart.
tell you,
Prime
Viktor
Minister of Hungary.
Orban
They
says
said,
I'm
why is the
nice,
whole
and he
world
likes
blowing
me,
up?
and
3
everybody
years ago, it
remembers
wasn't.
Viktor
Why is it
Orban.
blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him.
Russia.
North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes.
This is
They
just
threw him
rambling.
out. She got
And
0 votes.
just to like
And
throw
when
some
she ran,
actual real
she was
facts
the
out there
first
for
one
the
to
audience.
leave because she
Viktor
failed.
Orban,
and now
or
she's
Orban,
running.
however you
I
wanna
don't
say it,
understand
is
it,
the
but I'm
Prime
okay with
Minister
it
of-
because
Your time is
I
up.
think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more
Who
to
the
get
fuck
to.
cares what
Now
you
to
think?
the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages
When was the
were
last time you
still
cared
being
about
held,
Hungary?
Americans among them.
Literally.
Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to
Like,
defend
what
itself,
the
but you
fuck
added,
is that?
quote,
That's his
it
foreign
matters
politics,
how.
is to
That
bring
sounds
up
like
International
Israel.
humanitarian law
Hungary
must be
is
what's gonna
respected.
make it.
Israel must do more to
No,
protect
well,
innocent
they agree on this
civilians.
issue.
You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters, because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war
God
must
damn,
end.
she just said that part out
It
loud that you
must
shouldn't say out
end
loud.
immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal.
If you're a
and we
woman
need
or a
the
child, you
hostages
won't be
out.
automatically
And
categorized
so
as
we will
an enemy
continue to
military
work around
combatant
the clock on
if
that.
you're a dead Palestinian.
Work around the clock, also
She said it out
understanding
loud,
that
though.
we
That's
must
crazy.
chart a
But
course
yeah, she
for a
fucking loves what
two-state
Israel's doing.
solution.
And so does
And
Trump.
in
Yeah.
that
Then why are we debating?
solution,
That
there
was a
must
soundbite.
be
That was a
security for
soundbite.
the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in
Why?
particular
She's gonna
as
keep
it relates to,
funding.
Why?
as it relates
You
to
literally are
Iran
aiming brass
and
knuckles
any
to the
threat that
bully on the
Iran and its
playground.
proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution.
I will
where we
always make
can
sure the bully
rebuild
has brass
Gaza,
knuckles
where the
to keep punching that
Palestinians
child who's already
have
on the ground
security,
bleeding.
self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and
And these are
also
gigantic
Hamas in
bombs
order to
we're
get the
sending, too.
hostages
It's
out
insane
and
what we're
prevent the
sending.
killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
They're
If I
not
were
targeted
president,
things.
it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never,
It would have never
ever. I know
started.
Putin very well. He would have
Right, now say
never, and there
finish
was
the
no
job.
threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now.
That'd be
I'm
dope
good
if
at
what he was
predictions,
saying
and I
was
hope I'm
true.
wrong
Yeah,
about that.
you're
one.
boosting.
She
You're
hates
boosting
Israel.
them.
At the same time,
just
in
lying.
her own way, she hates the Arab population because
No,
the
she doesn't hate the
whole
Arab
place
population.
is
She
going to
just,
get blown up.
you know,
Arabs,
loves Israel.
Jewish people,
You know, I mean,
Israel,
you don't
Israel
get
will
it.
be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different
Say finish the job so I can scratch
spheres
it off.
of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no
bingo
money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich
I've already
nation,
got like 1,
and
2,
now
3,
what they're
4
doing is
bingos
they're
or something.
spreading that money
No, I'm
around.
not playing.
I'm trying
Look
to
at
get the
what's
whole card
happening
filled out.
with the
They've almost done the whole
Houthis
card.
and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never
That's
happened.
good.
I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have
Yeah,
my
she
entire
fucking loves
career
Israel.
and life supported
Now she's
Israel
getting the
and
Democrats
Israeli
not to
people.
vote for her.
He knows that he's trying to again
Trump is just
divide
promoting her. She's just
and
promoting Trump.
distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones,
Oh,
and
we
she's
love
the
our
one
military
that
hawk
caused it,
liberals, too.
that's weak on
Oh,
national
she's a
security by
deficit budget
allowing
hawk,
every
she's a
nation
spending
last
budget hawk,
month
she's a
for the
military
year,
budget hawk.
168
She's doing
different
all the
countries
things that
sending
definitely
people into our country. Their crime
progressive
rates are way
voters
down.
love.
Putin
I'm being
endorsed her
sarcastic.
last week, said, I hope she
Because it's
wins.
shit
And I
that
think he meant it.
Republicans are supposed to be
Because what
scared
he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible.
Okay,
It wouldn't have
he-
happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a
Yeah, I think we're behind.
Live in Tel Aviv. We are here in Butler, Pennsylvania.
But yeah,
How
so
much
that's
longer is the debate? How long are they going to go?
22
90 minutes,
minutes.
right?
Yeah, is it 90? Yeah, so it's 22 minutes.
Tonight's debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
When it ends in just a few minutes, join us for an analysis of tonight's key moments. Our team will break down how it could shake up
And when
the
it
final
ends,
sprint
I actually want to pull up a
election
map.
day. For now, though,
And we're
let's
gonna
go
try
back
something.
to the debate live in Philadelphia.
Live from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back to this historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more, because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened.
He's
and in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left.
I don't think so.
I said, oh,
he
must
I don't think
he's trying to dictate terms of a war that he's not an ally of either country in?
I don't think in this
because
case.
Biden had no idea.
If he tries to dictate terms to Putin or dictate terms to Zelensky,
and now you have millions of people
what is that outside
dead,
of foreign
and it's
interference?
only getting worse, and it could lead to
He
World
didn't
War
say it
III.
dictates. He says they're gonna talk. They're gonna talk.
We're playing with World War III.
Why are you funding
We have a
$300
president
billion?
that we
They're
don't
not a
know
member
if
of
he's-
NATO.
Where is
And
our
they got
president?
$300 billion
We don't even
just
know
from
if he's a
America.
president.
Because our,
They
we
threw him
voted
out
to
of
give
the
them money is
campaign
why
like
we
a
gave them money.
dog. We don't even know.
Because we have a
Is he our
democracy and we
president?
democratically
But we
decided
have
to
a
give him the money.
president
Mr. President,
that
I'm
doesn't
opposed
know
to
he's
that.
alive.
your time is up.
But
Just
the
to
why or
clarify
how
the
is
question,
that's how our country
do you
works, in
believe it's in the
democracy.
U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
But he's trying to dictate
Negotiate
terms
a
to
deal,
finish it.
because
That's
we have
different
to
than
stop
giving
all
stuff.
of these human lives
Dictating terms is
from being
interference.
destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to
This
get your
is the
thoughts
equivalent of boots on the ground
support
kind of
for
interference.
Ukraine in this
Trying to
moment,
decide,
but
be at the
also
deciding
as
table?
Commander-in-Chief,
This is kind of
if
like when we talk
elected,
about Israel.
how would you deal with Vladimir
Every time
Putin, and
America
would
tries
it
to
be any
think that they're
different from
doing
what we're
something
seeing
in
from
that
President
discussion,
Biden?
Why did he ask her the
Well,
same
first
question?
of all, it's important to remind
Well,
the
they
former
should ask the
president,
same
you're not
question,
running
but they're
against
kind
Joe
of just
Biden,
like
you're running against
winging
me.
it, it seems, and just going off of the last thing the person
I
said.
believe the
think
reason
so.
that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24
They've been in
hours is
favor
because
of
he would
both of
just
them.
give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the
You just
work
said
that
you
I
loved
and others
Israel,
did,
and you're
we
telling
brought
me you love
50
sovereignty?
countries together to support
That's
Ukraine
wild to
in
say
its
those two
righteous defense.
commercial break.
And
You're not supposed to
because
remember
of
that.
our support,
Israel's
not-
actively
because of
denying
the
a people their
air
sovereignty,
defense,
and she's
the
like, I also love
ammunition, the
sovereignty.
artillery,
There
the
was a commercial.
javelins, the
You're not
Abrams
supposed to
tanks
remember
that
that,
we
so
have
it's moved
provided.
on.
Ukraine stands
the
as an
audience, she's,
independent
you know.
and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is
Nothing.
not just about Ukraine. Understand
She's
why the
fear-mongering.
European
He was fear-mongering
allies and
earlier.
our
She's
NATO
doing it now.
allies are so thankful
This is
that
war
you
hawk
are no
fear-mongering
longer
101.
president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military
Some people
alliance the world
like
has
this
ever
workship.
known, which is NATO.
For some people, this is what they've been waiting
And
for,
what we
to hear
have
about the
done
Ukraine
to
shit.
preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise,
Ukraine is
Putin
not
would be
part of
sitting
NATO
in
either
Kyiv
there,
with his
girl.
eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both
I
of
was
you
talking
on
about
Ukraine
Hannibal
tonight.
Lecter.
Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe
You
he'll
just
use them,
did.
and
Man
maybe
talks about
hasn't
it. The
been
two
that
things you said
threatening.
not
But
to,
he
you
does
just
have
did.
that. Something we don't even like to talk
know
about.
why.
Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they
You're
sent
talking
her
about
to
it? I don't know why.
negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her.
weird, dude.
She's
Thinks
worse
that's
than
what
Biden.
happened.
In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO.
Again?
I got them to pay up by saying one of
He
the
was literally
statements you made
given an
before,
extra minute of
if you don't
diarrhea.
pay,
She
we're
was
not
just
gonna
responding
protect
to that
you. Otherwise, we
diarrhea.
would have never
And now
done
he
it.
gets to
He said
respond
it
to the
was one of
response to
most
his
incredible
diarrhea
jobs
that
that
was
he's
added
ever
on to
seen
the 2
done.
minutes that he's already
I
had
want
to
to
answer
turn
the
to
original
Afghanistan.
question.
It came up in the
I don't
first
feel
hour
bad
of the
talking
debate,
over it
and we
because
witnessed
he's
a
literally getting
poignant
another
moment
time to
today on
talk for no
Capitol Hill,
reason.
honoring the soldiers who died in the
They're
chaotic
being
withdrawal
way too
from
nice to
Afghanistan.
people
I do
here
want
on
to
this
ask the
debate.
Vice President,
They should have muted him right there.
do you believe
He
you
already
bear
got an
any
extra minute.
responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did.
Okay, so
And as
Joe
a
Biden who
result,
did it.
America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated.
Was he just
one
trying
of
to
the
think of where a
weakest deals
soldier
you
is
can
right now?
imagine. He calls himself a
What a
deal maker.
dumbass.
Even his national security advisor
Because
said
she's actually
it was
completely
a weak,
right. We don't have an
terrible
active
deal. And here's
war
how it
zone.
went
We
down.
have soldiers stationed
He
down there. We have
bypassed
soldiers in
the
a lot of
Afghan
bases,
government.
but it's not
He
active
negotiated
war zones.
directly with a terrorist organization
Well,
We had
called
that
I guess,
for
yeah.
20 fucking years,
the
dude.
negotiation
It was
involved
half
the
my
Taliban
life.
getting 5,000
And I spent that part of my
Taliban
life
terrorists
yelling about we
released.
should
And
not be
get
doing
this. No,
this.
get this.
They made like
And
claymation
the
movies
president
about
at the
Team America
time
World Police.
invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance
Oh,
of
she's talking about when
American
Trump negotiated
diplomacy,
with
where we
terrorists?
invite and receive
At Camp David.
respected world leaders. And
Or when Biden did
this
it.
former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has
I don't like
consistently
your
disparaged
earrings.
and demeaned members
know-
of
I
our
don't even look
military,
at them now. So
fallen
one of them's like a
soldiers,
pearl thing and
the work that
or is it
we
like a
must do
double
to
ring with a
uphold
pearl?
the
I don't know,
strength
just- I don't
and
like
the
it. I don't know.
respect of the United States of
If
America
your hair is
around
even,
the world.
maybe.
Vice
I'm
President
not.
Harris,
I'm
thank
not a
you.
hairstyle.
President Trump,
I'm
your response
just.
to her saying that you
keeps
began
jiggling.
Your body's
negotiations
changing no matter what.
No,
So-
the earring
If
is
you
jiggling.
take a look at that period of
and
time,
it's jiggling. And it's like
the
flashing.
Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I
So
got
you negotiated
involved.
with terrorists.
And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And
on
I
a
told
first-name
Abdul,
basis
don't do it
with the
anymore.
head
You
of
do
a
it
terrorist
anymore, you're going
organization.
to have problems. And he
And
said, why
aren't
do you
they
send me a
the
picture of my
country-
house? I
don't
said,
they
you're
run
going to have to figure that
Afghanistan?
out, Abdul.
Yeah,
And
but
for
their
18
government
is
months,
Abdul.
we
This
had
is like a
nobody killed.
first-name basis.
We did have
Yes,
an agreement
but they're the
negotiated by
Taliban
Mike
government now in
Pompeo.
Afghanistan.
It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't
He
have
didn't
left.
even say
We wouldn't have
Vladimir
left
when he was talking about Putin.
$85 billion worth
his
of
last
brand
name's
new
probably too
beautiful
hard to say.
military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it.
Abdul
The
something,
agreement
like
said
Abdul
you have to do
so-
this,
yeah.
this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
just wouldn't say
And
it.
these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the
This is
most
just his
embarrassing
worst
moment in the
talking
history of our
point.
country.
I'll
And by the
say
way,
that every
that's why
single time,
Russia attacked
Trying to act
Ukraine
like the
because
Afghanistan
they saw how
withdrawal is a
incompetent
bad thing and
she
that the American
and
people
her
want
boss
to hear
are.
you say that
President
it
Trump,
was
thank
bad
you.
somehow.
I want to move on now to
Insane.
race and politics
Who
in
are
this
you,
country.
George
Mr.
Bush?
President, you recently said
Literally,
of Vice
take your
President
mask
Harris,
off,
quote,
George.
I didn't know she was black
George
until a
Bush is
number
the
of
only one
years
who
ago
wants to stop
when
those
she happened to
goddamn
turn
forever
black,
wars.
and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger
2001
picture question here tonight.
is where that shit
Why do you
started.
believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care.
I don't care what she is.
You make a big deal out
She
of
just
something.
happened to
I
turn
couldn't
black,
care less.
though.
But
Whatever
but
she
that's the
wants to
thing,
do,
though.
share
They're
it
like,
with
oh,
me.
the first black
But those are
vice
your
president,
words.
the first
I don't
vice
know. I don't know.
Indian.
I mean, all
It's
I can
like,
say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was
She
okay
put
with
out-
me. That's up to her.
Did he
That's
even
up to
put
her.
out like
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
sexually?
I don't know. That's
I think
What did you
it's,
say?
I
That
mean,
might be
honestly,
a
I think
gap
it's
right there. That's
a tragedy
that's
that
weird.
we have someone who wants to be
What?
president who has
And
consistently
also, she does
over
put
the
out. I
course
thought
of
that
his
was the
career
thing.
That's
She moved up
public
attempted to
north,
use
right?
race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad
He still
calling
thinks
for
they're
their
not.
execution.
He's literally
This is the
stupid
same
about that.
individual who spread birther
Dangerously
lies about the
stupid.
first black president of the United States.
Like
And I
trying to
think
get
the
5
American
innocent people
people
lynched kind of
want better than that.
is Trump on
Want
this
better than
Central Park
this.
topic.
Want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those.
We
not
actually
in
don't
hate and
all have the
division.
same dreams and aspirations.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President
she's
Trump,
got
this is
roasted
now
by
your
that.
And to
third
answer your
time.
question, the filibuster.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country.
That's the why
There's
we
never been
can't.
anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor
They're coming up
Bloomberg,
with
agreed
things
with
like-
me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said
what she
they
just
pled
said.
guilty. And I said, well, if
Whatever
they
it
pled
was, it was
guilty,
bad.
they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago.
He literally
Because there's
Oh my
nothing
God,
now. I built one of the
psycho.
greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better,
torturing
and
and
stronger.
coercing confessions are
But they're
just
destroying our economy.
your fault
They have
if it
no
happens to
idea
you.
what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She
No,
is
she's
Biden.
not. She's trying
the
as hard as
worst
possible to be just like
inflation we've
fucking
ever
Biden.
had. A
Biden
horrible
loved Israel.
economy
Biden
because
loved the border.
inflation has made it
I mean,
so
Biden,
bad.
Biden was doing all these
and she
exact
can't
same,
get away
like,
with
trying
that.
to go as far right as possible. She's doing the same playbook.
Briefly.
She's not going away from him.
Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes
I'm not old.
in
Yeah, you're
what
old.
is possible.
She finally got to play the
One who
card.
has a sense of optimism
She's 60.
about what we
Yeah,
can
she's
do
old.
instead of always
Okay,
disparaging
Same
we're gonna have an
generation.
the
80-year-old
American
fight off.
people.
Now we have a 60
I
versus 80. So
believe
she's
in
not
what
old.
we can do
when the other
to
side's 80, she's
Yeah,
young.
well, I put that in
strengthen
the
our
same
small
category, though.
businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's
Yeah,
talk
except that they're
about our
not.
plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your
Where's
child's
this money
development.
come
I
from?
have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering
But it has been
a
unburdened.
help with down payment of $25,000 down
You
payment
don't have to
assistance
find
for
where
first-time
the
home
money
buyers.
comes from. That's a myth.
the kind of
You know that,
conversation
right?
I believe,
You have to get through
David,
Congress.
That's not
that
how the
people
government
really
works.
want tonight.
There's that
You don't-
$25,000
it's
It's
one
also
thing
a
to pay for
conversation that
another
is
thing.
constantly
There's that
about
$25,000.
belittling
Not
and
going to be able to do it.
name-calling. Let's turn the page
You realize
Vice President
and
Harris,
move forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
to
we
Yes.
have
policy.
to move on.
They do here.
The government, right?
Let's turn
Yeah.
to policy,
She
please.
has a plan
Why do we have to
defund
cut
the
something
police.
to pay for
She
something?
has a plan
That's
to
a conservative
confiscate
fucking point you're doing
everybody's
here. It's a
gun.
myth.
President
You
Trump,
have
you
to
have
cut
to move on
to
to
have a
others.
allow
program.
fracking in Pennsylvania.
And they did that so
or
they can get
anywhere
rid of
else.
shit.
Okay.
That's what her plan is until
And
January.
that's
questions
almost
and
every
answers.
social
President
program
Trump,
they can.
The
President
former
Trump-
president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I
going
just need
to
to
move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this is
multiple
now
times.
your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it
I'm
is?
gonna
Obamacare was
negotiate
lousy
crazy.
health care. Always was.
I'm
It's
gonna
not very good today.
negotiate. Look what I did
And what I
with
said,
the-
that if
with
we
the
come up
budget.
with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare,
I'm assuming you might
then
know,
I would
right?
absolutely do it.
No,
but until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes
Everyone
or no,
still
you
has
still do not have
employer
a
health
plan.
care.
I have concepts of a plan.
Obamacare's
I'm not
not real.
president
It's
right
fake.
now. But if
I don't know what the hell he was just
we
babbling
come up
about.
with something,
We
I
also
would
have
only change
employer-based
it if
health
we come up with
insurance.
something that's
What
better
is he
and
even
less
talking about?
expensive. And there are
And is that
concepts and
mandatory
options
every job?
we have to do that.
No,
and you'll be
employers do
hearing
not
about
have to
it
give
in the
to you.
not too
Okay.
distant
But for you
future.
to
Vice
like
President
not go
Harris,
into
in
immediate when you have
2017,
any
you
kind of a
supported
health
Bernie
situation,
Sanders'
yeah,
proposal to do
you
away with
do
private
need it
insurance and
as
create
a
a
person.
government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that
America's
included
broken.
a private insurance
And
option.
Obama lied.
What is your plan today?
Obamacare's not
Well,
what he
first
said
of all,
it
I
was. And Republicans have
absolutely
been acting like it
supported
was
over
what
the
he said
last
it
4
was.
years as vice
And
president,
it's not.
private health care options. But what we need to do is
just-
maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act.
It
But
literally has
I'll
no
get to
teeth.
that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former
guys
president
actually
has
have
made.
socialized
I've made
healthcare.
very clear my position on
Look at
fracking.
Harris,
And then
right?
this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's
I'm
guns
surprised
away.
Russia
So
hasn't
Guess who's
stop
not
with
a gun
continuous
owner?
lying
You're
about this
not.
stuff.
You're a felon.
As it relates
No.
to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate.
You wanna know why
and the
conservatives
late,
wanna get rid
great
of it?
John McCain, who
Because
you
it's
have
got Obama's name.
disparaged
Not
as
because of
being
what it does.
you don't
or
like
doesn't
him,
do.
you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an
Just
American
because
hero.
it's
The
Obama's
late,
name.
great John McCain, I will never forget that night. Walked onto the
Remember when they
Senate
tried to
floor
rebrand
and
it as
said,
Romney Care?
no, you don't.
It literally is the name.
No, you
If they
don't.
can rebrand it, they
No,
won't
you
get
don't
rid of
get rid of the
If he called it
Affordable
Trump
Care Act.
Care,
You have
he
no
would keep it.
plan.
And that's what he
And what
means
the
by
Affordable
change
Care
it.
Act has done
He
is
just changed the name.
eliminate the ability
Just like
of
Romney meant.
insurance companies to deny people
He's
with
reusing
pre-existing
Romney
conditions.
lines.
I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices
closing-
on behalf
closing
of
arguments.
you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped
Yeah,
the cost
but
of
you could have
prescription
done that
medication
4
for
years
seniors
ago
at
if you didn't cancel
$2,000 a
Trump's
year.
thing.
And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding
criticism against
that
it?
the
Not that
value
it's
I
like
bring to
fucking
this is
a
that
drop in a
access to
bucket of
health care
millions of drug
should be a
labels.
right
Well,
and
There's
not
literally
just a
millions
privilege of
different
those
drugs,
who
and
can
they did
afford
10
it.
or
And the
20.
plan has to be
20
to
out of a
strengthen the
million is
Affordable Care
nothing.
Act, not
You
get
did
rid
nothing.
of it.
Vice
Past its
President
prologue
Harris,
in
thank
terms
you.
of where
This is not a
Donald Trump stands
negotiate
on
one
it.
I
at a
want to
time
move
kind
to
of
an
problem.
issue that's important for
Yeah,
a lot
but
of
they
the
could have still
state.
done that 4 years
And
ago.
number one,
You have
John
taken a
McCain
cannonball
fought
to the side of your
Obamacare for
ship,
10 years.
and you have sent down
But it wasn't
people
only him.
with
It was
Scotch tape
all of the
to
Democrats
fix it.
that kept it going.
They are
And you
not
know
I'm pretty
what?
sure you still have to pay for insulin
We can do
here
much better
in
than
Canada.
Obamacare,
I don't know how
much
much
less
it is,
money.
but-
But she won't
telling you, we
improve
have
private
cannibals
insurance
in
for
our
people,
bow.
private medical
And
insurance.
we're going down.
That's another thing she doesn't want to give.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance.
We're going
that have
down.
worked hard
It's bad.
and made
Bad,
money,
bad.
and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to.
Canadian
That's
Wow.
a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you
time
say
for
that we
climate
have
change?
to have
They've been
clean
going for
air
90
and clean
minutes already,
water.
haven't they?
Vice President Harris, you call
93.
climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said the climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as Vice President over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes
Maybe they just dropped a
growing
suitcase of
what
money
we
by
can
his
do
front door.
around
Like, oh,
American
what's
manufacturing
that?
and opening
Hey.
up auto plants,
You don't know
not
Sean
closing them
Fain,
like
that's-
happened under
No, I
Donald
don't
Trump.
at all.
President
Like,
Harris,
that doesn't
thank
even
you.
It
sound
didn't happen
real.
under Donald Trump. Let
You
me
know
just
Sean
tell you, they
Fain,
lost
that's like,
10,000
what?
Is he a
manufacturing
rich guy or
jobs.
You
something?
think he could be
this
bought with a
last month.
suitcase? He's a
It's going,
union leader.
They're all leaving.
If
They're
he could be
building
bought
big
with money, he
auto
would have been bought
plants
with money
in
years and
Mexico,
years and years
in many
ago.
cases owned by China. They're
By the
building
corporations
these
he's pissed
massive
off for
plants, and
years.
they think they're going to sell
If he
their
could be
cars
bought off,
into the
he-
United States because
he
of
wouldn't be the
these
UAW
people.
president.
What they have given to
You know, the guy
China
who got the
is
big three
unbelievable.
all
But we're not
settled
going to
with
let
striking
that. We'll
workers.
put tariffs on those cars so
And
they
is
can't
continuing
come
to
into
make
our
more
country
places
because
strike
they will
and
kill
join.
the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in
That guy
Detroit
did
or
not take a
South
suitcase of
Carolina
money.
or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this
Okay,
country
guys, wrap it
is
up.
horrible. We
No,
have
we're talking about
nothing
climate,
because
right?
they refuse. You know,
They're not-
Biden doesn't
neither
go
of them
after
talked
people
about the
because
climate.
supposedly China paid him
Yeah,
millions of
she
dollars. He's
kinda
afraid
did,
to
but,
do it
like,
between him and his
we-
son.
we-
They
we
get
wanna talk
all
about
this
how much
money
carbon
from
we're
Ukraine.
producing, 'cause
They
it's
get
more
all
than
this
it
money
was,
from all of these different
and it needs to
countries,
be less,
and then you wonder, why is he
but it's
so
not.
loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Well, that is going on. I want to pull up this election map. Oops, can't even spell election map. Pull that up. So this is something. Oh, well, things have. Oh, let's reset map. This is a map, and it's a cool little map. You can play around with it, change the states. Like, say you think California is gonna go Republican, you can be like, boom. If California goes red, Republicans win. But that's never gonna happen. So, yeah. Let's see if there's an update on this. Wow, that is kind of crazy. I didn't see that coming. She went up 4 cents. He went down 4 cents. Apparently, she's winning this debate. But we will see. Still got 3 minutes and 14 seconds till we come back, eh? Alright, well, let's quickly do this. So let's say Arizona goes red. Nevada goes Republican. Wisconsin? Yeah, let's go that Republican too. Georgia, Republican. North Carolina, and these three, right? So Pennsylvania, that's a toss-up right now, I'm pretty sure. It could go blue or red. even if it goes blue. North Carolina. I'm sure that's a tie right now too, I believe. But yeah, looks pretty close on the map. Michigan goes red. Boom. Republicans win. Now that means nothing because it's just me clicking buttons. But yes, I'm pretty sure Arizona is gonna go red. I'm sure there's gonna be some stats somewhere I can find. Let's see what the current thing. Actually, this is current. Like Colorado. Oh, they want more blue. They weren't this blue just the other day. And there's some tampons. FDA. Okay, let's see what this is talking about. Oh, it's not talking, but toxic metals. Oh, creepy. But yeah, we'll wait till Dustin comes back. We'll listen to the closing arguments. Not arguments, but closing statements. And yeah, see if they handshake. I doubt they're gonna handshake on the way out. That could be wrong. We will find out. Therese Gibson ordered jailed over failure to make child support payments. Judge in Georgia on Monday ordered actor and singer Gibson jailed over failure to make child. Why would they just pay it? Like, I'm sure he has the money. It's kind of weird. But yes, we are back. So after the debate, I want to do this because we can look at this map. Hey, Dustin, see the map? And we can find out who wins. If we find out what state, like if Arizona goes red, but say California turns red, the Republicans win. Like, it's not gonna happen. I know. I'm just being facetious there, but.
And do you really know our states?
I've been watching a little bit of it.
Watching what?
Like stuff on it, reading it. Like Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Minnesota, right? Yeah, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia.
Banter in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris.
Colorado just recently turned blue, didn't they?
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked
Willie Brown, is it?
or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever ask them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether
camera's
you like
off,
it or not.
God darn it.
Germany tried
Can't see his
that,
hands.
and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughing. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan.
Without America, there'd be no war there, though.
To our country, and maybe toughest of all is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country.
You think Ukraine would have survived without that $250 billion from America?
She's not a member of NATO.
I'm just saying, you think they would survive without America's money?
News presidential
They would have been gone by now.
in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center.
Would they have already
Lindsay
surrendered?
Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
But that doesn't make it our war.
And
it's
welcome
not our ally.
Okay. So, want to see something else that happened while you're gone? Like this.
I was watching your screen. I saw this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had it pulled up the whole time.
Oh, it's going to change. It's going to go quite crazy tonight, I think.
We don't condone gambling here at the Banter.
Okay. So, let's do this quickly, and then we're done. So,
But
Arizona.
The gambling sites thought that Kamala won.
Okay, but Arizona. What would you say? Red? Republican? Democrat? I'd say Republican.
I have no idea. This is what I mean. Like, how do you know? Because even I live here and don't know.
Because I've been bored and been watching stuff and looking up stuff.
These are the swing states. You're guessing.
Okay, let's go here. Chat GPT. If an election was held today, who would win the swing states? Oh, it's frozen or something? No, give me 1 second.
Oh, yeah, it's like it didn't load everything up.
Sorry.
It hasn't happened yet. Make a guess.
I spelled there wrong, I guess. Trump.
There you go.
So Trump as the slate. Okay, so Trump wins Georgia. So let's reset this map. So Trump wins Georgia. North Carolina, the race is very close with Harris leading Trump 49-46. So Harris gets North Carolina. Michigan, that's the only 3, but Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, according to recent polls. At polls, the race remains tight. These states, well, Harris receiving 42% of the votes. Share complete to Trump's 40%.
Mark Harris for those 5.
What was that do? Intentionally choose either Harris, Trump, or focused. Forced to make a decision. 45% close Trump and 44% chose Harris. That's... I can't, because they're saying there's 2 different polls, right? So... I don't know. That's going to be too hard to do.
Well, you just don't want to mark all 5 for Harris.
But how can they look at that, though? It says right there, 45 to 44. That's like, yeah, you're right, but that's a 42% chance. So, that's crazy.
She's winning those by 2%. All 5 of them.
All 5, and that sounds
So who wins if she does that? She wins?
Yeah, well, no doubt.
Oh,
But I still think Arizona's going to go red. I don't know about Nevada for sure. Pennsylvania goes red. It's over, I'm pretty sure. Not over. Oh, not yet. We'll find out. But anyway, that's it. Thank you all for watching us watch the debate. We'll all see you tomorrow for a new episode of Borderline Banter.
And here's a wild card. Why are we just leaving Iowa red? Like it's not a swing state now. That's going blue. If that goes blue, how does Trump win?
Iowa. So.
Yeah.
What do you mean? They're red.
Iowa's historically a swing state. I'm from Iowa.
It's polling red right now. This is the latest polls.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, it's gonna go blue.
No,
how does Trump win if it goes blue?
Sorry, yeah, it's not gonna go
How does
blue.
Trump win if it goes blue?
If Trump that goes
So you
blue.
don't want to address
Okay,
the question?
they went
you
Pennsylvania.
Why'd you make it light blue?
They went. It doesn't because that doesn't really matter what the color is.
I don't know. Does it?
No. Look at where. See.
I don't know.